Now let's proceed. Thank you, Alora. Let's proceed now with James Casbolt. Hello, James.
Hi, Mel.
Now tell us a little bit about you. I know that my listeners probably know who you are, but there's a portion that probably does not. So just like Alora, tell us about yourself.
Well, in a nutshell, I was born in an underground base in Canada, underneath the small town of Nelson in the Rocky Mountains there. And the facility was known as the Q552. And I was conditioned and I suppose you could call it enhanced and trained for the first 4 years of my life. And in 1979, there was a rescue operation by US Special Forces. And a group of the children were rescued from the facility. They were actually being transferred to from the Q552 in Nelson. They had been transferred to Dulce in New Mexico, and there was an interception rescue operation, and the children were taken to Toronto, and from there they were farmed out, shipped out to adopted families, and I ended up in the UK in London. And from there, I was involved in military operations from the time I was a child all the way up to, now as an adult. And I lived between underground bases all over the world and the surface civilian population. I was being transferred in and out all the time. And I served just under a year with the US Army. I was released in December, and I was involved, obviously, in operations with them. At the beginning, there was an assassination campaign against the Rothschild family, and I was stationed at the biggest base in America, the Joint Base San Antonio, which consists of Randolph Air Force Base, Lackland Air Force Base, and Fort Sam. And recently I've been in contact with some high-ranking Air Force officers, and my memories are starting to come back of being involved basically as an astronaut in the space program. And I've been given some file information from US government databases which confirms this.
You sent me a message this morning. Somebody that you met at a recent event that you and I attended. Was that person in attendance at that conference?
There was a former Air Force officer, but let me see, it's around 2 years ago, I was given information by MI6 and NSA agents that talked about my involvement with the space program. Basically, to cut a long story short, I was, in 2003, I had my memories completely erased, and I was put into a tiny fishing village in the middle of nowhere in the UK, a little place called St. Ives. And I was cut off from all my connections. I had no access to any resources. And the plan was to just bury me there and hope I wouldn't remember. And even when I was there was it's like I say, it's a little tiny fishing village. There's an underwater base there on the north of the Cornish coast, near where the town I was. The sea shelf is shallow, goes out shallow for about a mile, then drops off into deep ocean. And there's an underwater base actually built into the shelf once you get out about a mile out to sea. And I was going out many nights at 2, 3 in the morning. I was onto the beach, and I was picked up by submarines there and taken to the underwater base. And there's actually some kind of sea gate out there that takes you to Peru, to Lake Titicaca in Peru. And
now, hold on for a second. How do you go from there to Lake Titicaca? You mean, are they caverns under the earth, and that's how you get there?
No, there's some kind of sea gate that takes you. You're not traveling for any tunnels. you're going through some kind of sea gate and it takes you straight to the lake.
Almost like a Stargate.
Yes, but under the sea. Yeah, it takes you there in seconds. And I was contacted by MI6 at the time and given some file information which talked about a rocket launch that I was involved with in Peru, in around the Lima area. And the rocket launch that I was involved in, I've got memories of this. I got memories of being in the space program for years. And the rocket launch was under the cover of a nuclear test, apparently, a nuclear explosion. And the file information said that I was involved with shipping some kind of female robots or clones. They were called Type 5 clones with blonde hair, apparently, shipping them off planet through some kind of space shipping lanes. And I also received information from the NSA that I was involved in some kind on some kind of orbital platform which orbits the Earth, which I remember being on that. And a lot of my files kept at the Air Force, Patrick's Air Force Base. And there was one file that was sent to me, and it's only short. I'll just read it to you. It says, top secret restricted Clavius, subject X4566/2, Casbolt James, assessment for covert tasking. One, unstable implant series TETRA has made X4566/2 unsuitable for liquidation covert ops. Two, recommend X4566/2 be retained for observation and released into the general population for FALLOW-RIGHT double-blind testing. And then it says Commander Clavius, October 4th, 1988. And I've looked into that, and it seems that Clavius is one of the NSA bases on the dark side of the moon. I think there's a crater there known as Clavius.
So are you saying that you went to the far side of the moon?
I've got memories of being at a facility there. I've got memories of entering into an underground aircraft hangar. And I remember being at the facility.
Do you remember how you traveled from Peru to that area? I would assume it was not a traditional rocket.
I remember, I mean, it's all coming back to me. The memories of being at the Joint Base San Antonio near the Air Force bases there are slowly coming back to me. But it's not that, again, a lot of scopolamine was given. It's not completely clear. I remember being dressed in a spacesuit on a conventional rocket. And I think there was, we were using some shipping lanes, space shipping lanes. And I think there was travel to the moon, definitely.
And again, this is all tip of the iceberg. We'll come back to you. Thank you, James.